Hey there, Twisters, and welcome, hockey fans. I'm Nick, and these are my 2023-24 NHL season predictions. I'm so excited the season is finally here. Now, we already did a live stream where the community made their predictions, so I'm going to be sure to compare your predictions against mine. And of course, in the comments down below, let me know your biggest hot takes. What are the standings going to look like for this upcoming season? What is your Stanley Cup final matchup? And of course, who's your Stanley Cup champion in 2024? And we're going to have all sorts of videos and live streams throughout the regular season and the playoffs and beyond. So if you're into that sort of thing, no matter who you cheer for, we invite you to hang out with us both here and also on our Discord. So we have a great community that we just started recently on there. So just see the pinned comment down below for a link to that. It's entirely free to join. All right, so let's get predicting. We're going to go division by division here. We'll start in the Western Conference with the Central Division. So you can see the community's predictions down below and mine on top. And it's not all that different except for 4, 5, and 6. I really think any of those teams could maybe challenge for a wild card spot. But with the Predators and the Jets specifically, they do have a couple of big name players that they could eventually trade out if they want to rebuild or retool their roster. So that's why I don't have them quite making the playoffs just yet, because there is some uncertainty there. But anyway, let's back up. We got the Blackhawks in 8th. Connor Bedard will prevent them from getting the number 1 overall pick in 2024. So, of course, they're going to be bad. They're rebuilding, but it will get brighter. I can't wait to watch Connor Bedard. 7th, we both have the Arizona Coyotes. I think the Coyotes could be a spoiler team. I don't necessarily expect them to be, contending for a wild card spot throughout the whole year, but they do have some good young weapons on that club. And really, the Western Conference overall is fairly weak. So I think that they could actually, turn some heads now and then. In 6th, I have the Predators with new head coach Andrew Brunette. Now, this team does actually have a fairly good roster in the sense that they almost got into a playoff spot last year without their entire top line due to injury. They still have a great goaltender in Saros, but I'm not entirely sure if they want to go all in with the chance of just barely making the playoffs. So there is that possibility of making a trade or two and getting some good assets for the future. In 5th, I have the St. Louis Blues. So the Blues to me are a team that I'm just not entirely sold if they can get back to that team that they were 2 years ago. They've lost some personnel since then. The defense has stayed the same, and that's been an issue for them. The goaltending has been inconsistent at best. Maybe Joel Hofer can come in and make a difference there, but I'm just not sold on St. Louis. They might need to kind of tear things down and restart. In 4th, I have the Winnipeg Jets. I think that they have the best roster between them, the Blues, and the Predators with a chance of contending for a wildcard spot. I liked getting Gabe Vilardi and also getting Alex Iafallo and Rasmus Kupari in that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. But is that enough to really vault them into a playoff spot when they could actually get some good assets in return for somebody like Connor Hellebuck or Mark Scheifele? That's certainly a possibility. And for both the community and for myself, we have the same teams in the top 3. So the Wild in 3rd. I think there's a decent gap between them and 2nd and 1st place, certainly. But the goaltending and the defense for the Wild did excellent last year. If they have Kaprizov for the full 82 games, that will certainly help. He could, score over 50 goals. Matt Boldy continues to progress. Although the rest of that forward group, I'm not big believers in. I'll just be frank there. 2nd, we both have the Avalanche. They'll certainly look to redeem themselves from last year's first round exit to the Seattle Kraken. Now, just like last year, they won't have Gabriel Landeskog for the full season, but I still think that they have enough firepower, especially with the top line. I like the Ryan Johansson acquisition for the second line, and the defense is the best in the Western Conference. They're so versatile, and they also defend pretty well in their own end. And in 1st, we've got the Dallas Stars. Lots of firepower, not just on the top line. They add Matt Duchene in the offseason. They have Miro Heiskanen continuing to just progress as one of the better defensemen in the NHL. Jake Ottinger has the potential to be an elite goaltender in this league. So I'm going to pick them to finish 1st. The Avs are a little bit banged up right now too, so that might have a bit of an influence on where they finish in the standings. Now onto the Pacific Division, and this looks pretty similar with the bottom 5 teams here for both of us. So in 8th, we've got actually my favorite team, the San Jose Sharks. They will finish with the worst record and get the first overall draft pick this season. There's just barely any sort of NHL caliber talent on that team. We've got the Ducks in 7th. I think that Terry and Zegras and McTavish can help this team take a step forward in the upcoming season. I like the Killorn acquisition. It sucks that he's out for a month. I think the goaltending should be a little bit better this year. I liked adding Gudis on defense. Lukasz Dostal might get some starts out there. We'll see if John Gibson can be dangled in front of any competing team to be traded. In 6th, we both have the Canucks. I said in a previous video, don't sleep on the Canucks, but when I look at their forward depth, it's just not all that good to me. Whereas a team like the Calgary Flames still has some of that depth there. The defense for them 2 years was great as well. Markstrom was not good last year at all. I think that he can rebound a little bit, but a new head coach in the locker room might actually help this club feel rejuvenated with Ryan Huska replacing Daryl Sutter. And just last on the Canucks, I know they have Pettersson, they have Quinn Hughes, they have Thatcher Demko in goal. So they have elite talent on this team. Again, it's just overall personnel. I don't see enough impact players underneath them. So we both have the Flames making the second wild card out of the Western Conference. The first wild card, we have the Seattle Kraken. I loved watching this team play last year. They still have all that great forward depth. They'll get Burakovsky back from injury. The defense is overall solid. I like the exchange of Dumoulin for Carson Soucy. He left to go to Vancouver. Good acquisition for the Canucks. The Kraken, I think their only weakness really here is goaltending. They don't really allow that many shots per game. They are able to score enough by committee, to overcome any mistakes that they have in net. So I think they could still make the playoffs. In third, I have the Golden Knights. You have the Kings. With the Knights, I think that with them being such a veteran club, having won the Stanley Cup, played late in the season, I think that they'll want to kind of rest up their players a little bit. I think that they should be able to make the playoffs. They have enough talent. A full season of Jack Eichel and hopefully Mark Stone will help with that, but I don't think that they'll necessarily feel that urge to win the division in order to give them that much more of an advantage. I think that they'll be just fine going into the playoffs. Now, whereas you had the Kings in third, I have them in second. You have the Oilers in second. For me, the Kings, lots of firepower on this team. Their top three lines now with Dubois added in the offseason, it's going to be pretty lethal. I could see a good season for Quentin Byfield. Kevin Fiala is still one of the great playmakers in this division. So I think that they have enough to get into the playoffs just based on that. And their defense, especially with Gavrikov, should be able to be a respectable group there. And in first, I have the Edmonton Oilers, just the two best players on the planet, arguably. And they still have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, Evander Kane. These players can still compete at a high level. The goaltending is still a bit of a question mark for this team, but Skinner played well in the regular season. I think Jack Campbell will look to redeem himself as well. So I think that they should be able to win this division and do so maybe more convincingly than we imagine. Now we go to the Eastern Conference. This one is a lot more competitive. This is going to be nuts. So we do have more differences of opinion here, although not all that many. So we start in the Metropolitan Division. So we both have the Flyers in 8th. I think that they, along with the Sharks, should compete for that first overall draft pick, or at least the worst record. They don't really have all that much like high level talent on this team just yet. And who knows, maybe they trade out Travis Konechny or they trade out Carter Hart. In 7th, I have the Capitals. I do like the Capitals. I think they could still succeed and be competitive this upcoming season. But maybe this is an opportunity where the front office thinks about trading off an asset or two, as difficult as that could be, in order for this team to retool for the end of Alex Ovechkin's career. He's still contributing quite well. They have other weapons in that group. Max Pacioretty, though, he's already going to be out for a little while. The defense, I think, is fairly good. I really do like the Sandin acquisition. Darcy Kemper's getting a little bit older. He's still a fairly good goaltender, but in the Eastern Conference, it's just very cutthroat. So I've got the Blue Jackets in 6th. You have them in 7th. I could see them taking a step forward, especially now that they've relieved themselves of the Mike Babcock situation. Really, this team, I don't think that they're going to have a lot of external pressure on them to be making the playoffs just yet. They have a great group of young forwards to go alongside somebody like Johnny Gaudreau, who's still an exceptional playmaker. I overall like the acquisitions of the veteran defensemen in the offseason, but still the goaltending needs to take a step forward for this team to really be a competitive club in what should be a difficult Eastern Conference. We both have the Islanders in 5th. The goaltending is fantastic from both Sorokin and Varlamov. The defense is good. Offensively, they'll have a full season of Bo Horvat in addition to Pierre Engvall. But I still don't think that solves enough of their scoring problems, especially even on the power play. It wasn't even that good once Horvat got to the club this past trade deadline. In 4th, so this is where it gets a little bit hot take, all right? So 4th, I have the Rangers. Now, it's funny because I was talking to somebody about this last week on Discord, and I said, yeah, Paul Bissonnette is a nut job for thinking that the Rangers are going to miss the playoffs. But then I look at that forward group. You have that kid line of players, and I don't think they're necessarily going to play with each other. I'm curious to see who really steps up in a larger role for the upcoming season. But beyond that, there isn't a whole lot to write home about with that forward group. The defense is still excellent, all right? And the goaltending, Shesterkin, maybe the best in the NHL. They have Peter Laviolette as their head coach. I like Laviolette, but he doesn't have the greatest track record over the last couple of seasons with the Capitals. They didn't even win a playoff series. And before that with the Predators, things kind of fizzled out after making the Stanley Cup final. So I'm not sure if he's exactly the answer for this team. So I'm not entirely sold on the Rangers, and I had to cut one or two really good teams from making the playoffs, and the Rangers are a casualty here. So that means in 3rd, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. And a lot of people are even sleeping on the Penguins and saying they won't make the playoffs. Now, the community said they'll make the first wild card in the East. With the Penguins, of course, they added Erik Karlsson in the offseason. I know he's a defensive liability. They brought in Ryan Graves to help with that. I think the defensive core is better than what people are crediting it for, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, they're still competing at high levels, as is Chris Letang. You still have Ricard Raquel, who's been a great Penguin so far. They added Riley Smith for some depth as well. This Penguins team is just really determined, going all in to make the playoffs. After missing last year for the first time in 16 years, I just can't imagine a Sidney Crosby-led team missing out back-to-back years, especially after augmenting their roster. In second, we both had the Devils. I mean, this team could be an absolute dynasty in the making. Could they take a step back this year after such a huge gap of improvement the previous season? I think that might happen, and I'm curious to see if this team looks any different now that Andrew Brunette has left as an assistant to coach in Nashville. But I still think this team has so much talent that it would be a real head-scratcher if they miss the playoffs, even as competitive as the East can be. The forward group is it might be one of the 3 best in the NHL. The defense did lose a couple of veterans in the offseason, but yeah, we have a full season of Luke Hughes to look forward to. I don't know how well that will translate to keeping the puck out of the net. At least the goaltending tandem for them with Vanacek and Schmidt is at its worst a competent duo. And in first, I have the Carolina Hurricanes, the best defense in the NHL. Goaltending for them is still strong. Forward group, not really a lot of showstoppers in that group. A couple players I'd like to see more from in this upcoming season, but they're still at least deep enough at forward to get into the playoffs. And defensively, they can actually add some points from the backside as well. And here's the Atlantic Division. This one's going to be absolutely wild. We start in 8th with the Montreal Canadiens. So I think they're probably the weakest team out of this group. I think that they're the only one that wouldn't be able to challenge for a playoff spot this upcoming season, but the future should be bright. And hopefully their roster will be healthy for the upcoming year so we can really see what some of these young players like Uri Slafkovsky and Caden Gooley can be capable of, and Cole Caulfield too. In 7th, I have the Senators. I was debating, putting them in a wild card spot for this upcoming season, but there are a couple of question marks. Josh Norris is still not 100% from that shoulder injury. I know he's been practicing. Jonas Korpisalo, you're not sure if you're going to get the good Jonas Korpisalo from last year with the Kings and the Blue Jackets or the bad Jonas Korpisalo from before that. He's wildly inconsistent. And I mean, they still have strong forwards and maybe an underrated defense. So could they still at least be competitive for a full 82 game season? That might be the case. I know they also have a bit of a cap issue with Shane Pinto as I make this video. In 6th, I've got the Detroit Red Wings. You have them in 7th, so we flipped the Senators and Red Wings. Detroit brought in a lot of different veterans over the course of the offseason, so I'm not sure how everybody's going to gel together. I'm definitely excited to watch Alex DeBrincat play alongside Dylan Larkin, but will we see an offensive resurgence from Lucas Raymond? Moritz Seider, will he get off to a better start in the upcoming season? How will the goaltending hold up now with Ville Husso and James Reimer? I do have a couple of question marks with this Red Wings group, and again, the competition is so stiff that I just don't see them actually taking that big step forward to make the playoffs. My wild card number 2, and I know you guys had them missing the playoffs and other people have commented altogether, and I understand why, but I've learned one thing on this channel, and that's do not sleep on the Boston Bruins, at least in the regular season. This team still has exceptional defense, very good goaltending from the tandem of both Jeremy Swayman and also Linus Ullmark, who won the Vezina Trophy. Let's not forget that. They still have one of the best forwards in the game in David Pastrnak. Marchand comes in as the new leader of this group, and I know they lost a ton of pieces. I know their center depth is completely depleted, with maybe Pavel Zacha being their 1C or maybe Charlie Coyle, but I think that Jim Montgomery came in and did an amazing job this past season. I can't just let that slip and say that they'll fall off by 40 points and miss the playoffs. They might fall off by 40 points, but I still can't say that they'll miss the playoffs. All right, positions 4 and 3 for us are flipped. I've got the Buffalo Sabres in 4th. I've got them making the playoffs as a wild card. It's such an exciting team to watch, led by Tage Thompson and also some of the young forwards that they have emerging, like Casey Middlestat and Dylan Cousins. Jack Quinn, once he comes back from injury, JJ Peterka. The defense, I like the veteran acquisitions in the offseason, like Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton. Rasmus Dahlin might compete for the Norris Trophy, as the best defenseman in the NHL. Goaltending, a bit of a question mark. Excited to maybe see some games for Devin Levi. But even so, I think they have enough weapons to get into the postseason. I've got the Panthers in 3rd. You have them as wild card number 2. They just have so much talent that's in its prime right now. Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk, Carter Verhaeghe, Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad, but once they come back from injury. So it could be a bit of a rocky start for the Panthers, but they finally figured out how to play Paul Maurice hockey with that group, and they looked just magnificent in the postseason against every opponent leading up to the Stanley Cup final. Now, we both had the Lightning in second, and you predicted them to finish second before Andrei Vasilevsky went down with that back injury. So he's going to be out for about 2 months. That's a huge blow to the Lightning, but I think that since they've had so much rest from the offseason, they should be able to bounce back just fine with the likes of course, Kucherov, Stamkos, he's playing for a contract. Braden Point could be a 50-goal scorer on this team this upcoming season. The defense is still strong for them. I like, of course, Victor Hedman, and Mikhail Sergachev only continues getting better. So I still think that this team, with how it's coached, could get back into the postseason. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish lower than second, but there's no way I'm going to say that they're completely out of the playoff race. And in first, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs, just lethal top 6 group of forwards. They added Max Domi and they added Tyler Bertuzzi in the offseason. William Nylander is going to be hungry. He's playing for a contract. Matthews, Marner, they're still in the primes of their careers. Tavares can still contribute as well. So I've got them as a fairly clear division winner here. So here's just a quick summary of the playoff teams that I have and that you have. So we both have the Hurricanes, Devils. You've got the Rangers. I've got the Penguins. You have the Penguins as well, but they're going to be in the Atlantic Division side of the bracket. I've got the Bruins returning to the playoffs, but we'll see. You have the Panthers as the second wild card in the Metropolitan side of the bracket, so they'll face Carolina in the first round. And then I have the Sabres as the wild card number 1, but you have them taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. And as for the West, we have the same teams. The Central Division side of the bracket is completely identical. I have the Dallas Stars actually winning the President's Trophy. And in the Pacific side of things, we have the same teams, but just in different orders. So in the first round, for example, I would have the Oilers playing the Kraken, and you would have the Kraken playing the Golden Knights. Actually, I'm sure a lot of us would look forward to that. All right, so here are my conference finals predictions. So these are the 2 matchups that I'm predicting through 2 rounds of the playoffs. My Eastern Conference finalists are the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, fundamentals, playoff hockey with that defense, versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think Tampa will ride Andrei Vasilevsky. He'll return from injury. He'll be healthy. He'll be playing like the Andrei Vasilevsky of old. And you seem to think that as well, but you have them taking on the New York Rangers. And in the Western Conference, I have the Avalanche getting back. Now, you predicted the Dallas Stars to come out of the Central, and I can understand they have lots of firepower, but as somebody has pointed out to me on this channel, the Avalanche just match up so well against the Dallas Stars, and we saw how their defense was exploited by the Golden Knights in last year's conference final. So I'm going to predict the Avs to go to the conference final yet again. They'll take on the Golden Knights. I don't think we should sleep on the Knights whatsoever, but I still think that they know what system to play in and how that will help them succeed. So I've got the Knights and the Avalanche. You've got the Stars and the Oilers. And for our results going to the Stanley Cup final. So you have the Stars versus the Tampa Bay Lightning in a rematch of 2020. I have the Hurricanes. I think they have the depth to get through the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think the Lightning are quite as deep this time. I think they can actually win a defensive stalemate there. And I've got the Avalanche advancing to the Stanley Cup final 2 seasons removed from winning it against the Golden Knights. I think that they understand how they can use speed to their advantage and how they can get around that bigger physical Vegas Golden Knights defense and also a really strong forecheck. I think the Avs should be very hungry to get back to the final. So I've got a natural disaster of my own for the Cup final. I've got the Hurricanes against the Avalanche. You've got the Stars against the Lightning. So who are our 2024 Stanley Cup champions? It sucks because my favorite team outside of my Sharks is the Carolina Hurricanes. And I've predicted them to win before. I'd be so proud of them to get to this moment. But I've got the Avalanche. Man, what a matchup that would be, right? Nathan McKinnon and that top line against the Carolina defense. The Avs are so unique in how they deploy their defenders offensively. That is what I think could give the Hurricanes fits. Whether that's Josh Manson, Cale Makar, especially Bowen Byram would be a good weapon to deploy offensively. I think that they can get it done and get back on top in the NHL as winning their 4th Stanley Cup in their franchise's history. You have the Dallas Stars. They should be one of the favorites as well. I know the Hurricanes are actually, in terms of betting odds, the number 1 favorite. So you've got the Stars winning their first Stanley Cup since 1999, and I've got the Avalanche. All right, guys. Well, those are my season predictions. What do you guys think? What's your biggest hot take? Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this. Do leave a thumbs up. That will help. And see the pinned comment to watch some other great videos of mine down below. You guys have a fantastic day out there. I'll catch you later. I'm Nick, by the way, for those of you who don't know. And see you around. Ciao for now.